before I hopped on the Colorado Trail, and the Colorado Trail was my first through hike, I was a little bit timid, is that the right word? Nervous, perhaps? Concerned. I was a little bit concerned that my gear wasn't up to snuff to do a through hike of that magnitude. Certainly more than a backpacking trip, but I took my regular normal backpacking gear and adapted it for a through hike. And that's really what I want to get across in this video, is how you take your normal backpacking gear, reconfigure it, and trim it down to where you have a reasonable weight to do a through hike with. Heck, I met a buddy on the trail, his name's Charcuterie, and he prided himself on the fact that he did the whole entire Colorado Trail with a lot of budget items, a budget tent, a budget cook system. I think a few of his items were name brand and were good quality gear. But the point is, you don't have to have the ultralight of everything to do a through hike. So anywho, let me hop off my soapbox here. Let's get into the actual meat and potatoes of what I took on the Colorado Trail with me. Let's start in the brain of my backpack. Let's start with the backpack itself. Very normal backpack for backpacking. It's a Joyder. That doesn't matter. You can do it with a Gregory, a Kelty, an REI brand. I had a very standard normal backpack. I did not use an ultralight backpack, and it served me just fine. Of course, you're gonna have your phone with you. I like to keep, let's do it this way. I'll come back to the electronics in a minute, but up top, I like to keep my pack cover. Most pack covers nowadays, they put them down here on the bottom. I don't find that to be a good place for them, because when I need it fast. And so I try to keep my pack cover up top. Another option is you can line your pack with a trash bag. Perfectly fine option as well. I just opted to continue to use my pack cover. The other things I like to keep up here in the top, rain jacket. I didn't use as much on the trail. In fact, when it rained on the trail, I just like taking my shirt off and just getting wet. I tend to dry out better that way. The rain jacket I enjoyed having on the Colorado Trail for in camp or in town when I didn't want to get wet there. Certainly an item I would recommend taking, and if I were to do the Colorado Trail again, I would take it with me. Let's see what else we have in here. Let's grab a couple items at once. Compass and a whistle. A lot of people made fun of me for taking this on the trail. I enjoy having it. It's the Boy Scout in me. I'll probably always take a compass and whistle with me. Flashlight, have a flashlight with me. This is the Black Diamond. You can take any flashlight you want with you, but you're certainly gonna wanna have one. There's a lot of early mornings on the trails. You may wanna go do Mount Massive or Mount Elbert. They're right after, I believe, Leadville, if you're heading from the east to the west. Mount Massive and Mount Elbert, those are two that you're gonna wanna get up early for and try to go do a summit on. And of course, around camp in the evening, always great to have a flashlight. And then my buff at night. I did not find that I needed a beanie on the trail, but I always kept a buff up in the brain, up in the top of my pack. A lot of times I would start in the morning with this on and then take it off my head, shove it in the brain of my pack, and then keep walking. I would wear it at night. But in the summertime in the Rockies, I just didn't find a beanie to be necessary. A buff did me just fine. And like I said, have my cell phone with me. Self-explanatory, everybody's got one of those. While we're talking about the cell phone, we'll go ahead and talk about electronics. An electronics bag is always good to have. You're gonna be wanting to take a few electronics with you. For me, that was GoPro, I took my GoPro batteries and the charger for the GoPro batteries, iPhone charger, and a wall charger. The one thing I did not carry with me that I would carry in the future, everybody had one and I can see why, is a battery pack charger. I was able to get away with it because I wasn't using far out. I had paper maps, and people also made fun of me for that, but I enjoyed my paper maps. In the future though, I think I'll probably start using far out a little bit more. And if you're using far out on your phone, if you're not familiar with far out, it's just an app on your phone. It's a fantastic app. You're going to be using more battery power, and I would certainly have a battery pack with me in the future. So good to have a little electronics bag. Put whatever you need in there. Let's get on through here. Let's do a few more smaller items before we get to the big four. So you're gonna want a Ditty bag. In the Ditty bag, first aid kit, toothbrush, toothpaste. I also keep my spork in here. The one thing I would recommend, I think you could probably put a good little Ditty bag together. The one thing I would recommend specifically for the Colorado Trail is to make sure you have an anti-itch cream, Benadryl, and a little bit of soap, especially in those first 70 miles because you're going to be in lower elevation. There's tons of poison sumac. I got poison sumac on the first day. I was able to go down to the South Platte River, wash my legs off, put hydrocortisone cream on, took a Benadryl, and the next day was significantly better. But those first 70 miles are pretty rough for the Colorado Trail when it comes to poison sumac. Elevation wise, kind of neither here nor there. Also keep my stove in here. It's a good place to keep your stove. So make a little Ditty bag. I think the Ditty bag in and of itself kind of deserves its own video. But toiletries, soaps, things like that. The only extra layer of clothing I took was a light jacket. This is a pretty rough jacket I've had for a number of years. I didn't feel like I needed multiple jackets. I didn't feel like I needed multiple layers on my torso. I had this shirt and this jacket that sufficed all the way through the trip. I had one pair of shorts, one pair of boxers, and 2 pairs of socks. That was all I took. If it was a trip where I was doing later in the year or earlier in the year, I might consider a beanie or a pair of gloves. But I think for the most part, if you're doing the Colorado Trail in peak season, which is going to be sometime in June, July, and August, a minimal jacket is, I think, pretty much all you're going to need. All right, let's get into the cook kit. That's the wrong stove. So in my cook kit, I have my original pie top fitted to, whoop, there it goes. I was just gonna say it was fitted to my pot. In here, I kept a chamois. This was nice. I could use it to bathe in the creek with, or of course you can do your dishes, dry stuff off if you need to. I just always kept that in there, washed it if I need to. And then a small 4-ounce canister of the isobutane propane mix. I think the smaller 4-ounce canister, if you're just cooking 1 meal a day, I think this is sufficient for the Colorado Trail. This got me pretty much all the way, I wouldn't say it got me all the way to Salida. It probably got me to, certainly to Breckenridge. I think one could certainly get you to Leadville. I'll say it like this, if you're cooking 1 meal a day, this will last for about 10 days. But if you're an individual who wants to do coffee in the morning, you're certainly gonna need a little bit more fuel for that. But I didn't have any problem getting all the way through the Colorado Trail on, I think maybe 2 to 2.5 of these. It really wasn't a whole lot. So, anyway, let me grab my pie top real quick before it blows off any further. Okay, so now we can get down, we're getting down to the fun stuff. Bear system, or a food containment system. So there's a notion on the Colorado Trail that you don't need to hang a bear bag or take any type of bear precautions. Allegedly, the average elevation of the trail is above 10,000 feet. I think that's true if you average it out. However, you're going to be camping more times than not at or below a level in which bears exist. You're not always going to be camping above 10,000 feet. And I met 2 gentlemen on the trail who actually had their bear bags, I won't say broken into, but a bear got after them, crunched all the food in here, and they had to throw them away. If you're going to upgrade anything, and if you have a bear canister currently, or you rely on bear bags, and you're trying to figure out where to spend your money on a through hike on the Colorado Trail, I think the Ursack is probably a good place to think about spending your money. It was easy. I can fit 5 days of food in here, tied around a tree trunk at night, forget about it, and the bears are not going to get it. Even the guys who did have their bear sacks, even the guys who had their Ursacks attacked by bears at night, the bears never got the food. So they certainly do, from testimony from others, they certainly do hold up. I've never had that happen myself. But I like the idea of taking some bear precautions while I'm out in the Colorado Trail. I think it's a smart thing to do, even though allegedly you don't need to. I don't buy into that. So, Oh, here's a fun item. Here's a fun item. Then we'll get into the big four after this. Really quick, I loved having a space blanket on the Colorado Trail. They cost 10 bucks, and you can wrap it around your legs and cook breakfast in it, cook dinner in it, and just have it. It's something to knock the chill off in the mornings and the evenings. You can keep it in your tent at night if you need it. But I wouldn't recommend putting it over your sleeping bag because it'll hold in the condensation. So don't put it over your sleeping bag. It's just something where maybe if you're packing up in the morning and as you pack your sleeping bag away, it's something you can wrap around yourself, just something to knock the chill off. But let's get into the meat and the potatoes, the fun stuff, the big items, the big four. One of the big four is I have a Thermarest. This is the Neo Air. You don't have to have the Neo Air to go on a through hike. However, it's a pretty darn good sleeping pad, I must admit. It inflates quickly. I like to use the stuff sack to snap on, just like that. And then you fill this up with air. I'm not gonna do it now, but you fill this up with air, roll it, and then send air into it. Really enjoyed that system. I enjoyed how quickly it deflated in the morning. Really no complaints about that. You'll notice that I actually pair my inflatable, and this is probably the bigger point to take away from it. If you're gonna take away anything from this, I would actually recommend taking 2 sleeping pads with you pretty much on all your through hikes. Take an inflatable one for comfort, and then take a closed cell foam pad for the durability. If this one ever pops, and they do pop often, I think we've all been there before, at minimum you have this as a backup. Further to that, you can sit on this at lunch, you can sit on it during breakfast, you can sit on it at dinner, you can pull it out pretty much any time of day. You can spread it out, share it with friends. I just really enjoy it. It makes at night, not to even mention at night, it'll make a rocky surface much more tolerable, and you actually get a good night's sleep. So for the weight, I think this is a luxury item to take. I would take it again. Certainly enjoy having two sleeping pads on the trip. Promised you we're getting down to the end. Let's get through a couple more things here. Whoop, fumble. I picked that bad boy back up. So I took 3 liters with me. I started out with a Sawyer squeeze, the bigger Sawyer squeeze, the original Sawyer squeeze, and that made it all the way through the trip. At some point, I can't remember if it was at Durango, once I finished up, I think it was once I finished up the Colorado Trail and before I went back out in the San Juans for another week. I think I switched over to this platypus and really liked the flow on this one, but nonetheless, a filtration system that you can attach to the top of your water bottle. All right, so let's get into the tent. So a lot of people are taking trekking pole tents. You can certainly take a trekking pole tent if you have one. I did just fine with my Big Agnes, my Tiger Wall UL1. It's a 1-person tent, a 1-man tent. And as you can tell, it has kind of seen some love and some wear, even to the point where the ends of these poles are starting to break on me. I've had so many good nights in this tent, really enjoy it. But a 1-person tent, if you're one person, just take a 1-person tent. I don't think you need a 2-person tent. Some people like to have the room. I can respect that. If you want to carry it, that's fine. But my recommendation, again, if you're looking at a place to spend money on the trip, 1-person tent at minimum, maybe even get a trekking pole tent. Those are very inexpensive these days. But you don't need to, I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't necessarily need to go out and buy a trekking pole tent if you have a good 1-person tent. I didn't want to. This one did just fine with me, and we still stayed at a reasonable weight. So I think that's everything in here. Pillow, blow up pillow. That counts as a sleep system. Let's go on down here to the sleeping bag. So your sleeping bag, whether you have a bag or a quilt, I actually have a quilt, I would highly recommend wrapping it in a trash bag. And some people hate on stuff sacks. I love having my stuff sack. But you're probably going to need I would recommend at least depending on how warm you sleep, 15 to 20 degrees might be a good rating for the Colorado Trail in the summertime. This one I think is This one's a 10, but I think it sleeps more like a 20 on the trail in all reality. And that kept me plenty warm, especially when you put on a new pair of socks at night and have a buff to put over your head. I'm trying to think if I've forgotten it. Oh, here's something over here. I did forget something. Probably one of the most important items of all is your poop kit on the trail. Carry a trowel, hand sanitizer, and of course always have some toilet paper with you. I think past that, that's essentially everything I carried with me. I'm still trying to check some of these pockets. Did find this. I do have a little bit of rope over there. Could probably take that out. The Garmin was an interesting thing. This is the last thing I have in here. So the Garmin, I think the Garmin is a personal decision to take with you on the Colorado Trail. While I like them if you're doing other things in Colorado, such as climbing 14ers and 13ers and doing some mountaineering, I don't know that you necessarily need to have a Garmin on the Colorado Trail. I hesitate to say that, however, because it's a life-saving tool. It's a great communication with the outside world in the event that you don't have cell phone service, which is quite often on the Colorado Trail. The only reason I say that you might not need this is because the Colorado Trail, specifically that 500 miles of trail between Durango and Denver, is heavily trafficked. There's a lot of people out there, and so on one hand, you're not really getting really far away from people. There's always going to be somebody coming through, especially in peak season. On the other hand, you are in a remote location. If you were to fall away from the trail, you know, this would be something good to have. So I think make a judgment call. I enjoyed having mine with me, just from the simple fact that I was able to send out a message every night to my family. They got an email that said, you know, I'm here, and that was kind of their way of knowing that I was alive when I was out of cell phone service. So the InReach Mini, it doesn't cost, or excuse me, it doesn't weigh a whole lot. It's relatively expensive, but it doesn't weigh a whole lot. So there is a lot of upside for a very little weight. So that's something that makes you feel comfortable if you want to take with you. Not a bad idea. It'll certainly go on trips with me in the future, especially mountaineering trips where I'm getting further off trail and getting further and further away from crowds. Something I want to have. But that is all I took with me on the trail. All told, about 18 and a half pounds of base weight. Once you add in water and 5 days worth of food, I mean, that's going to quickly come up to about 30 pounds on your pack when you're walking out of town. So it's a lightweight setup. It's a setup I think most backpackers can do with their normal gear that they currently have, just by trimming away some of the fat, trimming away, you know, maybe you don't need that camp chair, or maybe you don't need that beanie, maybe you don't need that pair of gloves because it's July. There's a few other things, but you know, if you only have a finite amount of money to spend on a trip, maybe just pick one area to improve on, and over the years your base weight will continue to come down. But with all of that, I never felt deprived on the trip. And again, I think it's just a reasonable approach to you know, using what you have to get through a through hike. You can certainly drop all the money on all the luxury gear and the luxury items and the lightweight items. Maybe not luxury items, it's probably not the right word, but lightweight items that you want. But at the end of the day, it's really what you're comfortable with, if you can use them, if you're familiar with them. Because if you show up in the backcountry with a bunch of gear that is the correct gear, the lightweight gear, but you're not familiar with it and you don't know how to use it, you're ultimately not going to have a good time. So make sure you're comfortable with your gear, you've tested your gear, you like your gear, you're familiar with your gear, and I think those are probably more important elements as opposed to just having the lightest gear possible. 18, 20, 21 pounds as a base weight, very reasonable, I think very doable. So anyway, y'all, we will wrap it up there. It is getting late, I have to go work, and we will wrap this up here. We'll come back in the future with another video, but for this one, we'll just wrap it up here. Thank you for watching, guys. God bless. Like I said, happy belated Veterans Day, and we will see you in the next one.